Hey there, Postal here. So today is July 4th. Happy Independence Day, everybody that's in the U.S. Well, happy Independence Day to everybody that's outside the U.S., but you get what I mean. Anyway, so today we're doing our final American plane, and I wanted to do something, plane I really enjoy quite a bit, and that is the F-86A Sabre, Tier 10 light fighter plane. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. Alright, so this is one of my favorite planes even before all the bombers were added to the game. I absolutely love the balance that this plane had. We're going to disregard the guns because I just want to talk about everything else about it, and we'll go back to the guns. If you look at the airspeed, the maneuverability, the altitude performance, it's top-notch all the way across the board. Altitude performance is going to go as high as you need it to go. The only thing that can quote-unquote out-altitude it are going to be things like an HG3 or the XF90, right? But they can out-altitude it, but not by much and not by enough to make a difference. Airspeed, the only thing that can out-airspeed this particular plane, if I remember correctly, as far as a fighter is concerned, might be the Swift. Yeah, the airspeed for the MiG-15 is basically the same. The Swift airspeed I know is ridiculous, 91. And airspeed for this is 86, so it's a little bit lower, but it's not. I've boosted it up quite a bit actually. Same with the maneuverability, and we're going to take a look at that. The reason being is because it was on the cusp of being one of the top airspeeds and one of the best maneuverability planes out there at this tier, especially. And now that I've boosted that, it's actually it's above and beyond anything I could have wanted. So what did I do to this particular plane? I think it's my only tier 10 specialized plane. Don't quote me on that, but I'm almost positive it is. What I did on this particular plane is it was already pretty maneuverable. It was already pretty speedy, and I just bumped that up to 10, right? Put the advanced lightweight wing frame on it, put the lightweight power unit on it to boost the maneuverability in both aspects. It reduces, in each regard, it reduces the plane's resistance to damage, but that's okay. Some of the rolls that I got actually kind of balanced out just a little bit. And if in my opinion, if you're avoiding getting hit in the first place, it doesn't matter if your plane can't take critical damage. You're in a light fighter, you can't take hits anyway. You get a couple hits on you from a 262 HG3 and you're toast, or a Javelin and you're dead. So avoid getting hit in the first place and you're good to go. But everything else I've done on this plane is to maximize the airspeed. So we've got the advanced polished skin on here, which kind of counteracts some of the maneuverability, but it gets a lot of speed. So this gives you 8% maneuverability. This subtracts a couple percentage of that. I feel it kind of balances out, and you still get a lot more maneuverability. You get a lot of speed. And then same with the high-speed gas turbine. You get a lot of acceleration, a big boost in max speed, as you're going to see in the game. The boost availability is knocked down 12%, but you've only got like 9 seconds of boost availability anyway, so 12% off of that's only about a second. And your maximum speed with boost activated is pretty substantial. You're going to notice that in game. I'm above 600 miles an hour pretty often. I'm above 500 miles an hour basically all the freaking time. And that's quick. It's very, very quick. I know that's, duh, Postal, but it just is so quick. I've also added the improved mixture control so that the thrust and the cruise speed is boosted throughout the game. And then, of course, I've got the engine cooling. My engine's knocked out from time to time, but very rarely. Not enough for me to warrant installing anything other than this engine cooling on here. And, of course, I've got universal ammunition. I've recommended it all the time for everybody. It's worth the silver, especially with machine gun type planes. But just in general, I use universal ammunition. So what did that do to my plane? Well, my airspeed, as you can see, is significantly higher than what it would have been. My maneuverability is significantly higher. I've already talked about the fact that its airspeed is on par with everything out there other than the Swift and some of the top heavy planes, but it's good enough to have you stick with a lot of the people out there. And think about it. Most of the time you're catching a plane mid-turn, or they try to out-turn you for whatever reason, they're going to bleed speed. If you're catching them mid-turn, it doesn't matter that their airspeed, overall top airspeed might be slightly higher than yours. If they don't have the momentum and you do, they're not going to outrun you. So that's why the airspeed is so important on this particular plane. But the reason I bumped up the maneuverability is if we just looked at the Swift, which we know is not a very maneuverable plane. We're not even going to look at that. The Key 1623, we can look at, well, you know what? Well, let's not even look at it that way. Let's look at it in this particular fashion. So here on the F-86, you have maneuverability, your turn time's 9.2, which is substantial at this particular tier. In jet age, you lose a lot of maneuverability with all that airspeed, so anything below 10 is really quite good, right? Yak 30, of course, is the pinnacle when it comes to maneuverability, and you're at 8.5, so you're even below that 9. But the difference is going to be the airspeed and the altitude performance. You give up a lot for that extra half a second turn time. Granted, the guns are better as well, but not all that much better for the situation. And so, yeah, you can outmaneuver anything in a Yak 30, but Sabre's not all that much further behind. The MEP 1101, of course, is not going to have any kind of maneuverability on this, 10.6 seconds. The Key 162 is going to be the next in line as far as maneuverability is concerned, and should be able to outmaneuver our particular plane. It's 9 seconds, 9.2 on the Sabre, and 8.8 on the Key. So the Key can slightly outmaneuver us, but the airspeed difference is going to be substantial when you're in the F-86, and the altitude performance is going to be substantially different. Look at the low altitude performance of the Key 162. It's barely better than the Yak 30, and that's certainly not known for its altitude performance. It's barely better than most multi-rolls out there, whereas the altitude performance in this particular plane, and you're going to see me up above 10,000 feet a couple times in this particular battle, is substantial. Your altitude performance in the Key is not substantial. And that really does come into play, and I think it comes into play just in this particular meta. There's a lot of high up that we talked about. A lot of high up heavy fighters are now more viable thanks to a lot of bombers being out there. This plane's more viable because now you've got the ability to. You're not necessarily attacking bombers quite a bit, unless they're bot bombers, but you're definitely attacking those heavy fighters and other light fighters that are up top there, and you can outmaneuver everything that's up there. Literally everything that's at your altitude performance, you can outmaneuver easily. The MiGs, the Swifts, the Javelins, all the XF-90s, of course. You can outmaneuver all those and the bombers, and stick with them for the most part. And if you need to come down to the mid-altitude or even low altitude in a pinch, you can outmaneuver basically everything down there as well. So where does this plane not do well? Well, this is where we talk about the gun armament. The guns are the same 50 cals that you've had forever and a day on this particular line, right? So they're the best that you can get as far as 50 cals is concerned. Effective firing range is basically 2,000 feet. You're only doing 80 damage per second times 6, so 480 damage a second. Not very good at tier 10, not very good at all. But you're able to keep your guns on target. You're able to melt them down slowly but surely, and you're able to get where you need to go quickly. I absolutely love this plane. I still love this plane. I think it's even more viable now. And I think it's an absolute terror. It can literally do everything you want a light fighter to do in game. And that's a lot, right? Light fighters need to be able to take down the heavy planes. Light fighters need to be able to dogfight other light fighters. Knock out the multi-rolls before they flip anything. They need to be a pain in the butt to ground pounders. You're not very good at taking down ground pounders. An IL-40 or 40P, any of those MEs are really going to hurt you. But you're able to be a nuisance, and your maneuverability can kind of keep you alive as long as you can try to stay alive. It's quite good against bomber bots. Not as much versus human bombers, because they tend to have their rear gunners set for kill. But if you're coming from the correct angle, you can still be a huge pain in the butt. So, I mean, the light fighters aren't meant to take out bombers like that quickly, right? Or ground pounders. That's the realm of the heavy fighters. And so to be able to still be viable in those kind of situations, I think is a big deal. And that's why I absolutely love this particular plane. That's why I think it's a better fit than every other light fighter out there. It's better than the Swift, because the Swift can't dogfight down low, right? It's better than the Key, because the Key can't dogfight up high, not very well anyway. Same with the Yak-30. I love the Yak-30, don't get me wrong, of course. But it's not going to be up at 8,000 feet doing the things that this plane can do. ME P1101, an excellent Tier 10 plane, but it doesn't have the maneuverability that you might need in a pinch when you screw up. So sometimes you screw up, right? We're all human. The maneuverability on this particular plane can get you out of trouble. So that's my opinion on this particular plane. It's one of the few planes out there that I think is just really well balanced. Even though the guns are not the best, I think if they were cannons, this plane would be overpowered. And you'll see why I think that as you watch the game. So let's hop into the game and see what I mean. Yeah, look at that thing. Such a pretty plane. Anywho, so what does this plane excel at? Well, you're not in a heavy plane. You don't have cannons. So it's a really good defender. It's a really good interceptor. It's a really good harasser. It might not necessarily be able to kill anything very quickly, but it can kill a lot of things, as we're going to see here. So my first goal here is to get down to the comm center. I want to flip that, get some bombers coming in, and just start being a royal pain in the butt. So we're getting up a reasonable altitude. I tend to actually try to get a little bit higher, but I've noticed recently that a lot of the defense aircraft have been spawning a little bit lower than I would have thought they would have been. And so instead of getting up to like 8,000 feet like I would have been previously, I only got up to like 7,500 feet. Alright, so we've got a bunch of Spitfires here. Let's get on target, let's start smacking them around. Trying to keep my momentum right now more than anything else. I figure we've got enough people over here. All I need to be is a pain in the butt. And do that, and to do that and keep my speed up. I see this bomber, it's not a human, so you can get on him and start knocking him down pretty quickly. Unfortunately, it looks like we didn't flip the sector as quickly as I would have liked. Get another one here. We'll get down here. So, unlike a lot of planes that have a lot of speed and hang up high, this plane can get down low and dogfight pretty easily. Alright, so now we've got this MiG-15. It's one of the planes I've got to keep an eye out on. It's got the airspeed if he wants to. He's one of those like a Swift that could technically outspeed me, but he's turning. So this is what I mean by, being close enough when it comes to airspeed. I can outturn him, clearly. I can outturn about everything. But I've got the airspeed to keep up with everything too, so if he's going to turn, I'm going to deal with that. So here we've got a ground pounder. Obviously I can't just stick behind him and, get my friggin' face punched in. It's a human ground pounder on top of that, so he's definitely going to be, a threat. So I just continue on here, boost up to 600 miles an hour, and let's get up top here. We've flipped the sector, so right now I just want to kind of defend the sector. See what we can do against this XF-90. Unfortunately, he's going so freaking fast. I think he's outrunning the bullets, it feels like. But hey, there's a bomber. So, I play this plane a lot like I play the Yak-30, except I play it at high altitude, doing what I do in the Yak-30 down low. I kill what I can kill that's nearby, and if something's pulling away, well then I just, hit the target button and get to the next closest thing. Got some bombers coming in here. Let's get them knocked out. And wiggling around a little bit. His rear gunner never even locked on me. That ground pounder is still alive. He's pretty low on health though, and now's the time to get him if I need to. Taking a look at what's coming in. I don't want him. A ground pounder, a human ground pounder, can flip this on his own, especially if it's a specialized plane like this particular one is. Just trying to pay attention to make sure that he hadn't dropped any bombs. And so now we've got this 262 coming up. Let's get our guns on target. He's a little bit bigger of a target than an XF-90, so we're able to get him. I do see that the MiG is down there. I definitely need to pay attention to him. But I also need to pay attention to this XF-90. I can get myself into a bad spot if all these guys start focusing on me. So was able to burn him out. Now we've got the MiG, and for whatever reason he thinks he can out dogfight me. I don't know if the Sabres just aren't seen all that often, or if he's just not focused on me as a threat. But hey, we'll take it. Alright, so we've definitely got the help of this attacker as well. And let's get up and get this bomber again. Unfortunately, even all this defense that we've been doing, they're still slowly chipping away at this sector. What I'm doing is basically holding this sector for as long as we can. It's early enough in the game to where we can try to flip some of the other sectors. I've done this to great success in other games, other matches I mean, where like I'll defend this one sector, they'll finally get it after 5 minutes, but in the meantime we've flipped everything else. So they did just flip this sector. Wasn't as good as previous matches where we had already flipped everything else, but we're still up 3-2 even with them taking this particular one. Keeping my momentum, so this HG cannot get away from me. No matter what he does, he was toast. Let's head on back down. And you can see I'm just keeping as high speed as possible. 450 miles an hour is, I think, the slowest I've been at, and that was near the beginning of the game when I was fighting those Spitfires. We're just going to keep on keeping on, although now my engine's toast. And now I will bleed some speed. Alright, so we got nothing coming in too detrimental as far as actual planes is concerned. We just have these Spitfires, but I can stick with these Spitfires pretty easily. And these guns are actually really good against these defense aircraft, whether they're Spitfires or Hornets or whatever the heck you happen to be going against. Keeping an eye on that ground pounder, but he's not the threat, right? I want to get rid of the things that can actually get behind me. And at this tier, those defense aircraft actually can be a pain in the butt if you just sit there. So, target to the next one, and I can get from 0 feet to 4,000 feet in a couple seconds, and I'm there, and pivot on a dime. So, again, just another reason why I really like this plane. It does what you need it to do. Alright, so I know I can't flip this sector on my own, but we've got plenty of capture points logged in there, so the heavies and bombers and whatever the heck else is there should be able to get it, boosting all the way up to 640 miles an hour, 650. Let's go defend our airbase. So they've got everything here, but again, kind of like a Yak 30. I don't mind getting stuck in. I know I can outmaneuver anything that is at a high altitude. I am down towards a pretty low altitude now, so if there was something like a Key or a Yak or an LA-15, I might have to be a little bit wary, but I don't have to worry about in this particular fight. But even if I did, I've got the airspeed to get away from those guys, and this guy does not have the maneuverability to get away from me. So again, I'm putting myself in position to control the situation. Unfortunately, we didn't get that guy killed until right after they captured it. They have 3 sectors compared to our 2, but we're pretty high up on points, so I'm not overly worried about this. I just want to try to get some frags basically at this point. The squall line is in, so everything that happens now is permanent, right? And I want to help kind of defend my guys and knock out more planes if we can. Coming over here, see if we can take care of him. He crashes anyway, so who cares? So at this point, I'm just gonna head over to the airbase. Realize that there's a Seahawk over here, and he's a much more bigger threat than the ground pounder. You know, I am in a light fighter, so a few hits from something like a Seahawk can actually take me out pretty easily, considering I'm at half health. And now we've just kind of got a dogfight with these Spitfires, which I'm perfectly comfortable doing because I've got the maneuverability to stick with them pretty easily. Alright, we'll burn him out. Flip ourselves over, and the game's over, right? I'm just kind of waiting for the ticker to tick. I figured it was going to tick any second now, so I'm just going to go straight. I guess I could have attacked that guy that just kind of shot at me and spun at him. I thought the game was going to be over, but it wasn't. But there it is now.
We're waiting for your return.
Well, I guess the Sabre's still viable. Let's head on back. Alright, so we were able to get 20 frags out of that. 700 capture points. A lot of that just playing defense down there as needed, but that's what this plane does, and does so well, as you can see. I completely think this plane is still viable. In fact, I think it might be even more impactful now that we've got all those bombers up top. You saw that I was able to take out the bombers a couple times. And yeah, they were bot bombers, but you know, most of the people in this game are bots. So if you run into a human bomber, obviously you play attacked a little bit differently. But that's the reason I've set this plane up for speed. And I know that I've got the maneuverability to outmaneuver basically anything but a Yak 30. So I've got it set up for the maneuverability, yes, but I've also got it set up for speed, and I want to have that speed so I can get where I need to get, and you know, or get away from what I need to get away from as quickly as possible. So this particular plane, it's the last plane on the Mustang line, and I really wasn't sure how I'd like this particular line. I had kind of cut my teeth, so to speak, on the Spitfires and the Yaks before it, and then hopped on this line, and I actually really quite enjoyed it. I don't mind the machine guns at all. I think the Tier 7 was probably the most mediocre of the bunch. The Tier 6 was okay. The P40 I actually enjoyed. Not a lot of people do. But if you're able to get the machine guns on target, and I always recommend you know, having that universal ammunition to help set things on fire. If you're able to get the guns on target, you're able to do a decent amount of damage, and surprisingly amount of damage, especially at the Tier 10. And the reason being is because you are so maneuverable. You're able to keep your guns on target a lot easier than you were in something like the P51A or D. Yeah, so that's my opinion on the Sabre. Still one of the best Tier 10 light fighters in the game, in my opinion. And definitely one of the most fun. I feel like I can do anything that a light fighter needs to do, where I don't necessarily feel that way with some of the other light fighters that are out there. I think this really, besides the quote-unquote gun armament power, everything else about this particular plane is top-notch, or exactly where you want it to be. So yeah, has your opinions on the Sabre changed? Do you happen to have this particular plane? If not, are you struggling getting down the Mustang line? If you are, it gets better as you go up. You just gain maneuverability and speed, and you know, the Mustangs were already pretty speedy, so yeah. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this particular video. Feel free to comment below. I always respond to the comments, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you are enjoying going down this particular line, and I hope you have a great week.